Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome to the Guitar Underground. I'm your host, Neil Santos. And in this episode, we're going to talk about the target tone. That's the mysterious, elusive tone that makes your phrase sound as though it is tied in with the progression, that you understand the mission that you have when you're soloing, and you're not just kind of winging it and spurting out just random things like in a weird conversation. All right, you're actually understand what is going on in the moment, and hopefully by the end of the episode, you're going to understand what a target tone is, how exercises that you can use to improve the target tone precision in your playing, and start to incorporate it into your playing. All right. So, what do I mean by target tone? Imagine there's a pilot, right? And he's great at flying. He flips, turns, and high altitude acrobatics, aerobatics, if you will. But he has never been taught to find the runway, so he can't land. And I feel like a lot of guitarists do this. They take off, and they can do these amazing things, these crazy licks, tapping, sweep picking, whatever, all the tricks. But then they never learn how to land that phrase, right? So that it lands properly. And I think that's where a lot of us feel less confident in our abilities. Like we can do all the tricks, but then when it comes time to stop playing that last note of the phrase, we're not sure where it should be, right? And then sometimes you hit the wrong note and then you have to keep going. You're like, oh, just kidding. I wasn't going to stop there. So, like if you're jamming over like a G major track and you're ripping through a pentatonic box or scale, G major scale, and then the chord changes to C. And now your stuff you're playing just doesn't make any sense. Your cool lick sounds, bad. So you freeze and go back to your G root note, something that sounds safe. You're like, okay, I know we're in G, so I'm just going to hammer on G. Let's get you away from that. Let's get you back to where you feel free to just fly around, and you know that when it comes to landing, you'll be there. You have the skills, all right? So we're going to look at 5 reasons that maybe you're not connecting, you're not hitting that target note, and then we're going to talk about 5 ways and exercises that you can improve your targeting ability, right? All right, so let's check out the 5 ways. Number 1, or the 5 reasons, right? Number 1 is what we call the home base fallacy, right? That's what I was talking about. Like if you're in the key of G, all your licks end on G. Maybe you hit that G too. You're like, ooh, look at me. But when everything ends on the root, things start to sound kind of like a nursery rhyme. They don't sound as sophisticated as you probably want your licks to sound. You're not a nursery rhyme sort of person. There's nothing. I'm not knocking on nursery rhymes. There's a reason they're so, long lasting, in the culture. But instead of that, maybe you could target other chord tones, like the third. Something like that. Of course, I end on the root, but you get the idea. I like the idea of saying, all right, if you end on the 3rd or the 5 or the 7, it's the difference between the root being like, I'm home, and instead it's like, land on the 3rd, or the other ones, I'm home chilling by the fireplace, right? They're both at home, but one has more of a vibe. One has more character and description to it. So yeah, that's the idea of the home base fallacy. Try not to always go back to that root note as your safety zone. All right, number 2, the fretboard is a map, not a grid. All right, so if you're looking at just the shapes, your minor pentatonic there on the G, G minor pentatonic, um, you're not going to really know where those notes are. You're just kind of moving around in the shape and hoping that you hit the right notes. So instead of seeing just 22, 24 frets of danger, you want to see these 3 to 4 bright lights per chord all around the neck. You want to see the root, you want to see the third, whether it's flat or natural. You want to see the 5th and maybe the 7th. And once you can see those around the neck, then it becomes more like just having fun. You don't have to be scared. It's not just 20, it's not just a ton of options that are all dangerous. You have these shining bright lights that you can target, that you can move towards, that are going to resonate with the chord of the moment, right? So when you know where the third lives, then you're not just playing the box anymore. You're playing towards a note. If you're trying to get to that note, now you can dance all the way over there. And then I land on the root. All right. Man, I'm not good at this. Just kidding. Well, you be the judge of that. Anyway, so that's number 2, the home base fallacy, right? No, a fretboard's a map, not a grid. Number 3, gravity and resolution. So some notes have tension, and then some notes have release. Oh, wait, I'm hitting E. I meant to be hitting G. Here we go. And then, you can release to the root or release to the 5th. And that sounds nice. So you have to play with that tension and release. Note that has a ton of tension would be the blues note. That has like the most tension. It's the Triad tune. And you can do cool things with it. It sounds gritty and cool. But if you just land on it, it sounds awful. It sounds like a mistake. But if you're using it in a passing context, then it sounds cool, So you have to be able to identify which notes are going to have that super amount of tension and use them sparingly to color your sound, to give that gritty emotion, bring that out in the listener. Yeah. Not to get into the ways to use these, but in a blues context, I know I keep landing on the root, but a great thing you can do to keep your flow, to keep the momentum of your solo, is to add that next note. So you land on the root. Like the phrase ends here, but then you go and end the phrase there, actually. And it leads like, oh, the story's not over, So a lot of blues players do that. I'm not sure. It's almost like the opposite of a pickup where you play something before the melody starts. It's like you play something after the phrase ends. A pickup or a leftover. I don't know. Leave in the comments if you know what that's called, if you have a good name for it. Yeah, so that's gravity and resolution. Really identify what each note's quality is, Number 4, listening versus looking. So your ears know where that target note is, but your fingers just they don't they don't know it yet. It's not intuitive to them, you know? Like if you were doing G major to C, you're jamming, and is the next note, but maybe your fingers don't understand that, but you can hear that. You know, and that's something that using the pentatonics and switching over chords and position that really helped me to train my fingers for that, because then we go, oh, I know where that is, but when you're looking at if every note, every fret on the guitar is equal, that's too many options, and the bandwidth is too high for your brain to say, all right, finger, go here, because it could be here, but it could be here, it could be here, it could be there. And you start second guessing yourself. So yeah, target, what did I write here? Yeah, the internal radio in your head meets the physical fretboard. That's when you start to really be able to hit these target notes. So that's the bridge. You want to bridge that gap between what your ears can hear, what your internal radio is playing, and what your fingers are doing to bring that out and make it a reality on the neck, right? So we'll talk about that and when we get to the tips. Number 5, the one note authority. All right. One right note beats 20 fast notes, right? Think of David Gilmour or Miles Davis. These guys, these artists are known for um, the minimalist approach, but the authenticity of what they play, the sincerity of what they play. I mean, I'm thinking of Yngwie as the polar opposite of David Gilmour, which is just flash and stuff, and nothing against Yngwie. I can't do that. And, you know, his music does have a certain soul and sincerity to it. But I think if you asked 10, 20 guitar players, which one has more feeling, which one does more with less, obviously it would be David Gilmour or players like that, Clapton, Derek Trucks, man, he's all about hitting those target notes and doing more with less, taking even just a motif and just wringing every bit of emotion out of it. Awesome. So yeah, one right note will beat 20 fast, just fluff notes, just whatever notes, throwaway notes, I guess you could call them, you know? So that's something to think about when you're playing. So those are the 5 reasons that maybe you're not connecting with those target notes, or you're not finding them when you need to, bringing them out in your playing. So cool. We're at the halfway point here. Next, we'll look at 5 tips on how to start bringing these target notes into your playing. But first, I must do the required commercial read. This episode is brought to you by the Pentatonic Way. It's my system for helping you do these things, helping you to incorporate these target notes and simple ideas of playing into your solos so you can sound professional and confident in the moment without hurting your brain, So if you want to know where you are as a pentatonic player, I'll read this commercial Here goes my commercial voice. Are you a box player, a scale drifter, a phase shifter, or a fretboard explorer? So most of us are stuck in either one of these categories without even realizing it. So head over into the Pentatonic way and take the Pentatonic personality quiz, and it takes 60 seconds, but it'll give you instant personalized advice for your specific level. Plus, it'll send you a free 5-day course designed to get you moving in the right direction. So stop guessing and start growing at thepentatonicway.com/personality. End of commercial. Yeah. So head on over there if you like it. If you want, you get some free tips on where you're at and where you can go next. Because the Pentatonic, you can do so much with it. It's insane. But it's a long journey. And if you don't know where you're at on that journey, you don't know where you're going, right? We don't know what's next. So that's the idea about the personality thing and the free courses that you'll get. There's 4 of them. Cool. All right. Here's the practical application segment. So 5 tips to try this week to get these target notes into your playing. The first is the slow motion solo. Put on a jam track, maybe a 12-bar blues, and your goal for this exercise is to play only 1 note per chord change. All right? So that note must be a target tone, the root, the third, or the fifth. No scales allowed. Just target those landing spots, all right? So let me demonstrate this for you. I got a slow blues backing track in A, and it's A major and D7 and E7, I'm pretty sure. So I'll be targeting the roots, the fifths, or the major thirds. Maybe I'll throw in a flat 7 here and there. But the idea is 1 note per chord. All right, here comes A. That's the major third. There's the major third of D. Maybe I'll go the fifth of A. Is that cheating doing the tapped octave? Here comes D. Back to the third there. All right, for this D, then I'll go to the A. That's the fifth of D. There's the third of A, and then go to the root of A. I'll go to flat 7 of A now. There's the third of E, third of E, back to A. Go to the fifth of A. Go to the third of A, and then there's the third of E. Let's try it again. I'm going to start incorporating the flat 7s. This is the flat 7 of A. This is the third of A. Here comes the third of D. I'll go to flat 7 of D. Now it's the third of A, which is right next to it. There's the fifth of A. Now I'll do the flat 7 of E. Flat 7 of D. Root of A, the third. Here comes the flat 7 of E. Now I'm just soloing, but I'm going to target those notes at the end. Third of D. Flat 7 of D. There's the third of A. The third of E. Flat 7 of D. Flat 7 of E. I went to that E a little early. All right, you get the idea. So once you can kind of target those notes one at a time, then you can start to incorporate them into your solo. Like you can do the licks and then you know where that target note is for those, So cool little exercise to get you pointed in the right direction. All right, the next one is called The Third is the Word. So in any major key, find the third. It's the sweetest note. Practice ending every lick on that third. Notice how it sounds more sophisticated than the root of what we were saying. Like I'm hanging by the fire instead of I'm home. I'm home in general, right? So let's see how this sounds. So just jam. And then maybe go to C. D. And then to G. Flat and on the root. There's the C, but the G. Now we'll go to D maybe. There's the third of D going to C. Third of C. There's the G. Then to D again, man. So really just try to focus on those thirds. That was just like a 12-bar blues in G, I guess. G to C, G to D, and G. I don't know if that's technically a 12-bar blues, but anyway, you get the idea. The point is not the progression, but it's the whatever chord is happening, try to target that third and really focus on that. All right. The third actionable tip is the visual triad overlay. All right, so this is kind of weird, but so look at your pentatonic shapes and really try to see the hidden chords within it. All right. Now, each pentatonic box has more than two, but two basic hidden chords, major and minor, right? So say you have the first shape here, and let me get it out in the camera. So here's G minor. Now you have the root, the third, the fifth, the flat seven, the root, the third, the fifth, the flat seven, and the root and the third. So you can take a combination of any of those, and you're going to have, a minor G minor chord. This. You could do. Let me see if I can play it. I was going to try to hit that flat seven there. Maybe do the fifth root, third flat seven. That's a pretty popular one. Fifth flat seven, third and root. Maybe do the third on the bottom again. But also in that shape you have, B flat major chords, right? So you have that's the sixth. You have the root, the third, the fifth. Then you got the root, the third. No, that's not the third. Root, the third, and then the fifth, and then the root. So all those arpeggios you learn are present inside of those pentatonic shapes. And, you just have a couple other added color notes that will work with the chord. So really, if you can, spend some time. If you use the pentatonics a lot, like I do, which is basically all I do, it helps to learn where the chords are, because then you can change pentatonic shapes per chord, like I was doing before, where I was playing like G major. So I play in the second shape, and I know the arpeggio is, root, third, fifth, root, third, fifth, root. And then I go to D. I'm playing the fourth shape now in the same spot. But now I have, you know, third, fifth, root, third, fifth, root, third, fifth. So I know that's the third. There's the third, the fifth. Yeah, so spend some time, really look at the pentatonics you're playing and try to identify, you know, where the major chord is in it, where the minor chord is in it. And that's going to help you so much when you're jamming. You're not going to just see them as boxes anymore, right? They're going to be so much more. They're going to be an arpeggio with some fun notes added in, right? And then you switch per chord, and you're seeing what notes change, and those are your target notes, which is pretty cool. Cool. The fourth tip exercise you could do is called the question and answer drill. So play a fast, messy lick, then intentionally land on a clear, vibrato heavy target note. All right, that's the answer. So let me try this. I have a little C to F backing track here. Yeah, that's right, girl. Sorry, I think you just said that. All right, cheers out. All right, so for this one, it works better on do the fast stuff on the F, I think, and then do that long note on the C. And the reason being, so like, for example, here's your F chord, right? And in that area of the neck, if you're playing that major chord, you can play the fifth shape of the pentatonic. And so this note here is important. That's your F. Why is it important? Because when you play the C here, in the same part of the neck, you can play the second shape of the pentatonic. And what note changes there instead of the F? There's only one note that changes between those two shapes, and it's here. So you flat that note, now it becomes an E. And that works great as that long held note because that's the third of C, right? I'm going quick here because I don't want it to be a long video, but if you think about that, that third is going to sound better when you just hold it. So let's treat. There's that note. So here comes F. I'll try to play crazy over F. Whoops, I was playing up with the wrong one. That works too. This is C. So you can see, if you know where that target note is, you can really manipulate the phrase, you know? You can say, I'm going to play fast on this chord, and I'm leading towards that note. I know where the destination is, but I can do whatever I want to get there, you know. Now, I was just kind of going random places, jumping all around, these huge leaps, but I know that the end note is that third from the C. So that's the idea with that one. That's really powerful exercise. All right, so the last one is sing before you swing. So hum a 3-note melody, then find those 3 notes and one of them will feel like the end, and that's your target, right? So if we take that same progression, start at the beginning. Right? I just want to hum those bass notes. The bass line reminds me of something out of Labyrinth anyway. Da, 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 da. I'm sorry, I'm not the best singer. Da, da, da. Da, da. It helps if I do it with my playing. It anchors me on the tones. That's why I play guitar. Let me see. So that's the idea, like that's trying to tune your internal radio, like we talked about, with the external reality of what you're playing on the neck. And it's going to help you find those notes. So do it without singing. If you're a great singer, or even mediocre, you're going to be better than I am. But if you are like me, do it with the playing, and navigate and explore that way. And eventually that's going to link up what's in your head with what's out here. All right. So cool. So those are 5 practical tips you can use hopefully today to start bridging that gap between what's inside, what's outside, what is happening in the chord progression and the target notes that really need to be in your playing to make it sound professional and like you know what you're doing, and not just kind of the old spray and pray sort of thing, like throwing paint at the canvas and hoping the Mona Lisa shows up. Like you want what you play to be intentional, and target notes are a big part of that, if not the most important part of that. Yeah. Let me see what I wrote here. Improvisation isn't about how many notes you can fit into a bar. It's knowing which notes you're aiming for. If you know the destination, the journey takes care of itself. If you have to get from here to there, you can now run there, you can skip there, you can cartwheel there, whatever. You can bear crawl there, whatever's your thing. However you want to express yourself, you know where you're going, so you can do it in your own particular fashion. Idiom, sir. Idiom. Thank you. Cool. If you feel stuck, it's not because you lack talent. It's because you're trying to navigate without a map. So start small and find one target tonight. Try one of those exercises. All right? If this was helpful, subscribe to the Guitar Underground and share it with a friend who's also currently lost in the boxes and trying to find their way. And yeah, till next time, stop practicing how to fly and start learning how to land. All right, I'm Neil Santos, and I'll talk to you next time on the Guitar Underground. Take care, everybody.